Hi, I'm Vanessa Oliver, and I'm a registered dietitian with UKHR Health and Wellness. In the best of times, we can feel heightened stress and emotions, and many of us respond to these feelings by eating through them. And this is probably not news to most of us, right? But this can lead to an unhealthy cycle. Your emotions cause you to overeat, and then you beat yourself up for that, so you feel bad, and then you find yourself eating more to get through those feelings. So if you feel like your emotional eating is in overdrive, we're going to take a look today at how you can take control of your emotions and how you process them. Practicing this intentional emotional input and output, and practicing a little bit of self-reflection can help you make more emotionally productive choices. So first, we're going to quickly define what emotional eating is, and then talk through 3 strategies to help you better manage it. So that quick definition of emotional eating sounds like this. It's basically eating for reasons other than being physically hungry. We might eat to relieve stress. We might eat to cope with unpleasant feelings. We might eat to cope with unpleasant emotions, or even to celebrate pleasant emotions. Think of a birthday or another celebration. Now, occasionally using food as a pick-me-up, or as a reward, or a celebration, or as a coping mechanism isn't necessarily bad. Occasionally, right? But if eating becomes your primary way to cope with your emotions, if your first impulse when you're feeling bad or mad or sad or happy is to open up the refrigerator or open up the cabinet and see what's in there, then you can get stuck, right? You can get stuck in this kind of unhealthy cycle where the real emotion or feeling is never addressed because you are addressing your feelings with food. Okay, now emotional hunger can't be fulfilled with food. Eating might feel good in that very instant moment, but the underlying feelings and emotions that triggered the action are never dealt with. They're still there. So think of emotional eating as a canary in a coal mine. All right? It's a signal that your own needs are not being met and they're being stuffed down instead. There's probably restriction in other areas of your life. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Maybe you feel your social connections are not where you'd like them to be. Maybe you're not having fun. Maybe you're not practicing self-care. Maybe you don't have enough downtime, okay? And what happens is you're subjugating these needs by addressing them with food. So let's talk about those 3 strategies, okay? That first strategy that I have for managing emotional eating, give up that restrictive tendency toward food and toward eating, all right? Why not increase your autonomy instead? Maybe you're limiting yourself too much. Maybe you're only allowing yourself to eat the right foods. Maybe you're labeling certain foods as good and certain foods as bad. Okay, all of this is actually increasing your propensity toward food cravings, especially in response to emotions, strong emotions. Instead, try eating satisfying amounts of nourishing and nutrient-dense foods, while making room for your fun foods, for your play foods, for the foods that bring you joy. And get plenty of variety on both sides to help welcome all foods onto your plate. Ridding yourself of that deprivation and self-denial can help negate the battle between your willpower and that basic psychological need that we all have to feel in control, right? That need that we have for personal autonomy, okay? Autonomy is that desire to make our own choices regardless of outside pressures and influence. Because when willpower fades, as it's bound to do, because, we're human, That desire for autonomy causes many of us to choose eating as a way of reestablishing that personal control, as a way of reestablishing that choice. Because if you're constantly restricting your food choices and perhaps even combining that with stuffing down and restricting emotions as well, that's a lot of control that's swirling around. And you're gonna end up kind of blowing a gasket unless you give up some control somewhere. And so a lot of us are gonna give up control around eating. So we feel more in control, if that makes sense. But what happens with that control is it's usually just for a moment, okay? And that relief in that moment is followed by a cascade of feelings like guilt, of anger, of failure. So what do? Well, a practical application of this particular strategy might be, of course, allowing all foods like I mentioned, but even more practically, maybe allowing yourself some snacks during the day, right? In between meals, or giving yourself smaller portions at first with the full knowledge that you can choose to feed yourself again later with more of the same food, right? As well as eating more consciously and more mindfully and savoring the food that's in front of you, allowing yourself to fully experience those foods at the same time paying attention to what amounts make you feel good physically and emotionally and mentally. Here's strategy number 2. Remember that feelings are information, okay? A friend of mine put it this way recently, and I thought it was really cool. Feelings or emotions are messengers, right? But they don't need to be roommates. What does that mean? It means that we can learn to have a conversation with our feelings. We can hear the message that they're bringing us. We can sit down with them, acknowledge them, hear them, but we don't have to live with them all the time, right? Because we can learn from these challenging and difficult emotions like fear or like sadness or uncertainty. And then when we take a listen and take in the information that these emotions are trying to give us, we can acknowledge it, thank it for coming, show it the door, right? Acknowledging makes it possible and easier to move past the feelings, okay? If you'll forgive me another metaphor, it's like walking into a dark room, all right? You've got to know where the obstacles are so you can make it to the light switch. Maybe someday you'll figure out to put that lamp right by the entryway, right? But once you can sit with these emotions and difficult feelings, give them a little bit of attention, the attention that they're screaming for, you can learn from them, you can move on, right? And not spend so much energy and control in suppressing them. Now, in real life, this might look like keeping a feelings journal or another similar mode of emotional awareness. In this journal, you're going to do a few things, okay? And these are some of the things that I'll do when I'm keeping my feelings journal. Number 1, you want to note what the emotion is that you're feeling, okay? And also note how you're feeling it. Do you sense it physically, right? Do you feel it like in your head or in your neck or in your shoulders? What is the emotion? Identify as much as you can about it and don't deny it, okay? Just validate it. And you are validating it by trying to identify all of these factors about the emotion. Number 2, ask yourself, what triggered me to feel this particular way? Why do I feel the way that I feel? And write that down. Number 3, realize that the emotion, no matter how overwhelming it feels in the moment, is temporary. It will pass. And number 4, be open to what your emotion is bringing with it, while simultaneously letting go of the need to control that emotion. Let go of the need to judge yourself for experiencing that emotion, okay? So now that we've got these 2 strategies, increasing your autonomy around eating and letting go of restriction, and then also paying attention to our emotions and feelings and journeying through them, I want to put them together for the 3rd strategy, which is this. Remember the true purpose of food, Okay, now in my mind, there's kind of two purposes that work together. They don't need to be mutually exclusive, okay? What I think the true purposes of food are nourishment, right? Not only nutrients. And the second one is food does bring pleasure, but it does not bring comfort, okay? And keeping those separate, I think, is really key. If you find that you are turning to food for comfort, challenge yourself to find comfort and take comfort in non-food ways, right? Now, this will mean having that conversation with yourself, and maybe you've never had this conversation before, but ask yourself, what brings me comfort? What brings me joy, right? It might be a while since you've kind of answered that question. Now, comfort might mean self-care, like a meaningful physical activity or a warm cup of tea or some great fuzzy socks or a relaxing bath, right? It might be a hobby like knitting or reading or fishing or taking a walk or a hike. It might be connection, like talking with a friend or playing a game online. It's going to look different for everyone, and it might look different for you from day to day. But the point is to discover these comforts for yourself by having that conversation with yourself. Might feel weird at first, but give yourself compassion as you try to figure out these answers, okay? It takes practice, but it's a skill that you can definitely learn if you give yourself the space to try. And by doing this, in turn, you're going to learn not only what you like, but also learn how to not use eating as a primary emotional management tool. Instead, you can use some of these ideas, I hope, to engage and build your internal resilience and your internal strength. For additional help, you can always contact us at EatWell for weekly support or to schedule a one-on-one appointment. Be Well and Work Plus Life Connections are also resources that you might find useful for managing emotional eating. I hope this talk has helped, and we'll see you soon.